Today is going to be a slower video. I want to talk about some personal stuff related back to Taiwan, talk about some domestic trends I'm seeing with relationships, and generally all the suffering we're seeing in the world and the pain, and how people are more casually evil. Do you see that? There was a tweet that went viral a few weeks ago. It was like, that was a tweet. People are more casually evil, and it went viral. And there's this HBO show called White Lotus. Maybe some people say it's a programming slop, but there's a line in season one where the young boy goes, "Where does all the pain go? Where does all the suffering go? We are in a post Gaza world. Whether you think it's a G side or not, where does all that pain go? And if it's not a G side, where does all that energy go?" Energy is not destroyed, it just gets recycled, recreated. And I thought about why I'm going to leave the Taipei logo up. Because, in Taiwan, domestic violence is very, very common. And corporal punishment, brutal punishment on your kids, I would estimate a good 40% of the population still strongly advocates for it. There was one time I was on the way to Taipei, and there was an old woman, at least 60 years old, just shaking the crap out of this boy. This boy looked 3 years old, 2 years old at most, just shaking the crap out of him. And, sometimes I say Taiwan is a few generations behind in terms of some progressive ideas. But now in 2026, we're also seeing that some progressive ideas create a lot of problems. And we have forgotten things like the fundamental attribution error, which is a psychological phenomenon that there's wide consensus to support it, even though psychology is a relatively young science, and it's not a hard science like a STEM. But the fundamental attribution error states that when we judge ourselves versus when we judge others. When we judge ourselves, we will bring in circumstance and explanations that, soft sell or sort of sanitize our mistakes, if you will, or our sins. Who is without sin, right? And then when we judge other people, we will remove the circumstance and we will attribute it to character. That person did X because that person is Y. That person did X because, he's a piece of crap. He's a liar. She's a liar. And, what inspired me to make this video at first, and maybe we can challenge ourselves to breathe deep for this video, make it more meditative. Do the Darth Vader breathing, Ujjayi breathing, activate mindful breathing, choosing to pay attention to something that we don't have to pay attention to, right? You can breathe without paying attention to it. So what happens when we breathe and add attention? That's really what meditation is, at the crux of it. Stay away from those crazy cults you find in Vancouver. Stay away from Nexium. Stay away from the Dalai Lama, who had meetings with Nexium. I have to mention that because I have a Tibetan friend who gets constantly attacked. "Oh, you're a ladyboy. You're not really Tibetan." Because she's presenting the non-Western mainstream version of Tibet. Anyway, so people are suffering more. And what is the effect of consciousness in suffering, with all this suffering that we're seeing now? Right. My contention is people are more casually evil. We're losing the fundamental attribution error more and more, and it's becoming more harsh. We're judging people more harshly. People are being judged in 10 seconds, in 5 seconds. Who you follow on Twitter, who you're mutuals with on, Instagram. That's a judgment. Guilty by association. These things are on the rise. And, social media, in a sense, is just a game. But this game is taken very seriously, and it's not a game for all. And some people are playing it very sincerely, and some people are playing it in a very nasty way. Right? Demons, dirges, and dire situations. But social media allows us to test ideas and get feedback. But what's happening because of these algorithms is we're being pushed like sheep into echo chambers, and then certain voices are amplified. Problematic voices are amplified. And what are we going to do about it? My solution is definitely meditation. And my motivation to talk about this stuff is really selfish. I feel much better now that I'm expressing myself and I'm speaking. Um, I was in a very contentious, difficult marriage for 8 years. And it was a relationship where I felt like I gave and gave and gave, but I didn't get much back in return. And the second time I recovered from cancer, I realized I had been blind to a lot of things. Because in Taiwan, domestic violence is normalized. Gaslighting, fear mongering, victim blaming, these things are all very normalized in Taiwan, Republic of China, for whatever reason, for better or worse. There are pros and cons for the more traditional approach, and there are pros and cons for the more progressive approach. Everything needs a case by case analysis for us to see what path we should follow. And who has the time for that? Right? Who has the time to be Marcus Aurelius and write meditations and be all stoic and act like nothing bothers him? Maybe you do meditate to a point where nothing does bother you, and good for you. And that's certainly possible, right? But suffering is still so common, and a lot of people don't feel free. The words of George Carlin still ring very true. And so this is where I want to slow down and get a bit more personal. My whole life, I really put women on a pedestal because my mom was a hero. My mom survived horrible abuse. One of my first memories, I was 5 years old and I witnessed my dad throwing something like a metal rod at my mom. And she quickly turned around and it hit her in the back, but she still screamed in pain. And my paternal grandmother ran to comfort her. And my paternal grandmother is generally very unfriendly to my mom because of family dynamics in Taiwan, Republic of China. There's a concept of inner family and outer family, like Neji in Naruto. The dad side of the family is the real family, and the mom side of the family is considered the guest family. And once a woman marries, she's expected to do certain things, right? And oh man, that's just a short example of what my mom went through. And then, I was beaten till I blacked out when I was 6 years old because I called things out. That's my problem. I call things out. And it seems like the more I speak, the healthier I am. The more I hold it in, my teacher in China says, that's compression. Don't hold it in. And you can see when I'm being very honest, I let out my ums and ahs. So that's something I'm doing on purpose here because lies are so common, more common than before. Compared to when I was a kid, everything seems darker now. We live in the gray zone, and it seems there's more black than white now compared to before. Because, like I said, people are in pain. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of desperation, economic desperation, spiritual desperation, psychological desperation, emotional desperation. And I'll remind you again, I think men are more emotional than women. Men are more romantic. Men are socialized to be emotional in a certain way. You could argue that anger is the only socially acceptable form of emotion for a man. Because if you're not angry and then you express your emotions, you're seen as a simp or a cuck or whatever. And, I'm suddenly reminded of this date, a few dates I went on with this, this girl from the Canton. She was Canadian, Hong Kong. She was wild. Every time I got into her car, I thought I was going to lose my life. She was a dealer, dope dealer, and smoke dope, lose hope. But she was selling some harder things. And one time, but I still saw her in a romantic lens. That was my trend. I've never had many one night stands. I've mostly had relationships. Uh, one of my girlfriends who turned into a friend would joke, "Larry, you're a classy lady, right?" Uh, she wanted to knock boots before I did because I really put romance and women on a pedestal because of my mom. But now I see that my mom is also a victim in many ways, and she is also a narcissist in some ways. And narcissism is a disease. I don't blame narcissists. Anyways, this girl from Hong Kong that I'm thinking of, she criticized me for for asking for her consent to kiss her. And I didn't have any problem with it because I felt I don't always ask for, hey, I don't always ask, hey, can I kiss you? Like sometimes it's very obvious I can go for the kiss, but with this girl it was never obvious, and she would always get close to me, but there was a weird energy, and that's why I asked, and she got mad. She didn't like that, and then so that was basically our last date. I didn't like it either, right? That kind of pushback felt weird. And then a month later, she ends up learning meditation from me because she was assaulted sexually. And isn't that so? It's very terrible, right? You've seen my previous. You probably haven't, but my previous videos, I said I support chemical castration for first-time offenders of sexual offenses because this stuff really changes a person forever. And so I'm not sharing this story to blame her in any way if someone is interpreting it in that way. I'm saying that there's a rot in our society. There's a spiritual rot. And as a father, I'm so worried for my daughter. And my ex-wife didn't tell me about her first boyfriend until 8 years into our marriage. She thought I was going to be mad at her because she had, from what I can remember, she had an abusive boyfriend when she was like 13, 14. And this boyfriend seemed to have left a really deep mark on her. And my ex-wife's dad died when she was young. So when I got cancer for the second time, I could literally hear my wife's thoughts as a 15,000 hour meditator. Maybe I was just making it up, but verbally she said, "Oh fuck, what the fuck." But her face, and I could hear her thoughts. She was saying, "Fuck this. I don't want another. I don't want to deal with this again. I don't want a man's life in my hands. I don't want that responsibility." I remember we had a really nice night in Taipei. We got drunk and had a lot of fun. But at the end of the night, when I tried to talk to her about my fear of losing my life, that was not acceptable because she kept asking me, "What are we going to do without you? What are we going to do if you lose your life, Larry? What are we going to do?" And I felt this pressure to keep fighting, but I didn't feel support. I just felt pressure. And now that we're apart, we're both better, but the victim is the child, and modern psychology makes it sound like, oh, separation is fine, children are resilient. And my ex-wife talked to AI for a long time, and AI basically just says, yeah, do what you want, it's all good, we'll find a way to fix it. The grief that your child goes through, we'll fix it, we'll repair it. The rupture is fine. Remember, I have a therapy background, psychology background, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine background, East and Western healing. I have studied it intimately, gone to these conferences, blah, blah, blah. Worked on all sorts of people, gotten close to all sorts of people, seen people get better, seen people get worse. Time is the true equalizer. No one knows when our time is up. But man, there is so much pain in the world, and then there's so much justification and rationale for the things we do in 2026. And things are moving so fast, and everyone's acting like an expert. That's why China's regulating social media. You have to prove you're an expert in your field to talk about certain things, especially if it's going to be related to the well-being of a person, because the well-being of a person indicates the well-being of a society. Everything's connected. And we're going to have to get more honest at some point, right? I'll repeat Terence McKenna again. Things are going to get weirder and weirder, and we're going to have to talk about it. Before this video runs too long, if it goes past 20 minutes, it's a real pain in the butt to upload. So I'll end it here. This has been a rant video, more selfish, more for my benefit. So thanks for allowing me to share. If you have questions, I will answer as best as I can. For personal stuff, I'll keep it somewhat vague to respect the privacy of my people. And we're going to do our best as co-parents in this modern world.